Welcome to the 2013 season debut of Prepare to Survive, Pinellas County's E-Series presentation on disaster preparedness. I'm your host, Tom Iovino of the Pinellas County Communications Department. For the next 15 minutes, we'll take a look at insurance and hurricanes. As we all know, insurance can be a very involved topic, so you definitely want to take some notes. Joining us today is Ginny Holscher, Director of Pinellas County's Risk Management Department. Welcome, Ginny. How are you doing today?
I'm doing great, Tom. Thanks for having me.
Well, thank you for coming out. Insurance, big topic. Ginny, first of all, let's tell our viewers a little bit about your experience in insurance. How long have you been working with it?
I've been in the insurance industry 39 years. Next year it will be 40. And I started in personal lines with a direct writer and worked for independent agent and actually was part owner of an independent agency, and then worked for a broker. And I came to Pinellas County about a year and a half ago.
And having that experience certainly helps us because you know exactly what's going on when it comes to insurance.
Yes, and it really does give me the perspective from both the personal homeowner perspective as well as the business perspective.
Valuable, because we may be touching on that later. Let's talk a little bit about insurance and hurricane season. I think there's a lot of questions out there. People just don't understand what's covered, what deductibles are. You know, let's kind of get a little basic 101 primer here. What's going on?
Okay, well, a homeowner policy, assuming you don't have a windstorm exclusion, which I would highly recommend no one have, would cover you for the wind damage done by a hurricane. And as to deductibles, the deductible is usually special when it comes to the hurricane. You could have a windstorm deductible and a hurricane deductible, or your carrier may say all windstorm carries a special deductible.
Okay, now wait a second. You're talking about windstorms and hurricanes, but if you have to have that regular basic insurance on your house, the fire and theft and liability, that's not covered in the same part of your insurance.
Well, yes, the homeowner policy can have windstorm and hurricane coverage right in it. So your same policy that covers the fire covers wind and hurricane. There are such policies called hurricane policies, but they're very limited and only for during the hurricane. And most homeowners have the exposure of their house burning down during the year that they would want to insure, as well as the windstorms like tornadoes that can cause a lot of damage that are not from a hurricane. If they spin off from a hurricane, they tend to be under the hurricane deductible. And so your limit basically is going to be the same limit as your fire policy under your policy. The difference will be your deductible. Many times there's a special either wind or hurricane deductible based on your carrier, and it can be 2% of the total value of your home. It's not 2% of the loss, it's 2% of the limit that's on the declaration page of your policy. Okay,
so if your home is declared to be, say, $100,000, that means your deductible, if you end up in a windstorm, $2,000 as opposed to maybe a $500 deductible for fire loss.
That's right. That's right. And it could be 5% based on where you're located, based on the value of your home. Many times homes that are within $100,000 to $500,000 are allowed to have as much as a 5% deductible. And so if you have a $200,000 home and your wind deductible is 5%, now you're talking about $10,000 before any coverage is paid under the wind or hurricane deductible. If you have a fire, it might revert back to the $500 or $1,000 deductible that you have. Okay,
so windstorms are certainly different.
That's right.
Okay. Now let's talk a little bit about what you can do to help reduce your premium. I mean, there are some, a lot of people will come in, they'll put in new shutter systems, new garage doors. Are there things that you can do to reduce your premium?
Absolutely. And what you would want to do is talk with your agent or your carrier if you're with one of the direct writers and ask them what are the things you can do and what is the credit you're going to get. And that way you can do a cost-benefit analysis. If I do this, it's going to cost me $10,000 and my credit on my policy is $200. Doesn't mean you shouldn't do it because it could save your life, but you would then know what is the benefit. But that amount that you're going to save is each and every year going forward. So in many times you can amortize that over the policy, and you're actually, it is worth it to do it. Not to mention that it'll cause less damage inside many times. So having shutters for your home that are approved, having special hurricane clips or bracing on your roof might qualify you, having wind-resistive windows, all those kinds of things can be things that you can get a credit underneath your policy for, and also makes you more favorable for being accepted by the insurance company.
Okay, that's important as well. But just think about making that home safer in the event of a storm.
Absolutely.
That's critical.
The most important part. That's correct.
Everything else is stuff.
That's right.
Ultimately comes down to it, but saving lives is important.
That's
the
right.
most important thing.
That's right.
Now, when we talk about insurance, we talk about hurricanes, there's another threat that comes from these hurricanes, and it's flooding.
Yes.
And we know that there's a different policy that's purchased. And I know that a lot of people go to floodsmart.gov
Correct.
to find out more about the National Flood Insurance Program. How does this program work?
Well, it is very important, and if there is one thing I would hope folks might take away from this, it is that flood is not covered under your homeowner policy. It is a special coverage, and many folks are under the misconception that if the flood happens during a hurricane, it's hurricane coverage. Not true. A flood is a flood, and it's been tested before. The difference is, now not all water damage is flood.
Okay.
If the roof blows off and the wind-driven rain is what comes in and damages your contents, that's still the wind coverage, the hurricane coverage. If you have a broken pipe, that from not even a hurricane, a broken pipe is water damage. That's not necessarily going to be flood. Flood tends to be rising water. Doesn't have to be from the Gulf. It could just be your neighborhood is inundated with water, and in fact, it doesn't even have to be a natural catastrophe. There is one definition of what is a flood under the flood policy that is an accumulation of runoff water from any source. And so it could be that, but it's in general coming from the ground into your house.
Okay.
So that's
if
the
the
way
water
to
comes up, it's
Yes.
usually covered under the flood policy.
That's right.
But if it comes from down, then it's usually a separate.
That's correct.
Under windstorm.
That's correct.
I mean, there's different ways for water to get in your house. Obviously, the water could rise and come in through the windows and doors and things like that. But there's also the possibility of things being backed up into your home, say through the sanitary sewer system.
Yes.
Under what conditions would these be covered under your regular homeowner's policy, or would they fall under the flood policy?
There's a nice little dovetail between most homeowner policies and the flood policy.
Okay.
The homeowner policy, if it provides sewer backup coverage, will have an exception for a general inundation of water in the area. The flood policy will exclude sewer backup unless there's a general inundation of water in the area. And so they're pretty, we have had that situation as we went through Debbie.
Okay.
There were many homeowners who the sewer backed up, the water system backed up. There was just so much water from the system. That would be a flood situation typically. But the average, a sewer backup could happen
Any day.
any day. That's a coverage that would be an endorsement on a policy if it is offered. There's a couple of carriers who do not offer the coverage, but it is worth asking your agent about. But the flood policy will cover you for the sewer backup because of a general flooding in the area.
So like we saw with Tropical Storm Debbie last year, 10,
Correct.
15 inches of rain
Absolutely.
can cause some,
Yes.
wreak some havoc.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Interesting
absolutely.
stuff when you're-
And an important thing to remember about the flood insurance policy, if you don't carry it currently, and some folks don't because they say, oh, I'm not in a flood zone. Well, that doesn't mean you couldn't be flooded, and it is still excluded. So, but there is a waiting period because everybody would want to have their agent bind flood tomorrow if the hurricane is coming. There's a 30-day waiting period unless it's at the time of a closing. If it's a home purchase, you can buy flood insurance that day. But and by the way, that's something that you might want to think about if a hurricane's coming, closing on a house, but that's a whole different topic.
Of course.
But there's a 30-day waiting period. And so now is not too late to be looking into the purchase of that flood policy, because if you get all the application and everything in on May 1, it's not going to be effective until June 1. So now is a good time to be thinking about that.
Interesting. You always have to plan ahead with these things. Interesting. Now, when we talk about insurance, we talk about a couple kinds of insurance out there. One is, if your vehicle is damaged in a hurricane. We see stories about this all the time. Is that covered in your auto policy?
Well, if you have comprehensive.
Okay.
And the tree from the hurricane falling on your car, if your car is flooded, that is comprehensive coverage. And some folks decide, I've paid off my car, but it's still worth a lot to me. The collision, the physical damage costs a lot. And so they make, in my opinion, the mistake of canceling both the comprehensive and the collision.
Ooh.
And so my recommendation would be, of the two, comprehensive usually tends to be a little bit cheaper. Keep the comprehensive. If you feel like you want to take the chance, or you can control your car and you want to take that risk for collision, the comprehensive you may still want to keep, because we're in Florida and because of the chance that your car could be flooded or damaged by fallen limbs, trees.
That makes sense. Now, another thing, that we hear a lot with business owners, they can get something called business continuity insurance. What is that all about?
Business interruption insurance, business continuity, is really a very important coverage for businesses, nonprofits. What that does is keep your revenue stream coming in after a loss. And in general, the business interruption loss of a business far outweighs their property damage.
Really?
And you can get coverage for business interruption, and it doesn't have to end in 1 year. It can go beyond your policy period even. You buy it up front, and it covers you for a certain amount of time until you're, based on the limit that you carry.
Of course.
And you can even get something called an extended period of indemnity, which, because the day you open your doors, all your customers don't know it. They're not back.
Oh, sure.
And so it makes up the difference for 30 to 60 days after you open to make you whole for what you would have been making. And I would definitely recommend the business, because that loss can far outweigh your property damage.
Yeah, that sounds like it's an important thing, especially if you want your business to continue. I'm sure a lot of businesses fail after a disaster.
Yes, they do.
And that's something you don't want to happen,
That's
especially with trying to get people back on their feet.
Yes.
Having those employees and trying to get back on their feet, that's an important thing.
Yes.
We've got about a minute left, Ginny. What do you want people to come away with from this presentation with? What do you want them to know?
There would be two things I'd want to make a point. If you live in Pinellas County, you should have flood insurance. That's
regardless of your elevation.
If you live in Pinellas County, I suggest that you have flood insurance. And the other thing is that it is important that you go around with your iPod or your iPad and just take a 5-minute video of everything in your house. If it is leveled, you will not be able to remember everything. So take that, take your policy or a copy of it, and take your pictures with you if you need to evacuate. And by all means, it is about being safe first. Like you said, the rest is just stuff.
Well, that's really important about the home inventory. I could barely remember what I had for breakfast this morning. So it's definitely good to get that documentation to help make you whole afterwards. Ginny, I can't thank you enough for coming on today. This is really important information. Hopefully our viewers are able to take some of this away and get themselves ready for hurricane season this year. I
hope so, and thank you so much for having me.
My pleasure. If you would like to see a repeat of the presentation, visit www.pinellascounty.org/eSeries. If you'd like to know more information on how to prepare for hurricanes or other potential disasters, visit the Pinellas County Emergency Management homepage at www.pinellascounty.org/emergency. And if you have any questions about today's topic, be sure to email them to ema@pinellascounty.org, and we'll get right back with you. Join us again for the next Prepare to Survive E-Series. Stay safe.